I was asked today, how is the AP Lang test scored? And I wasn't able to give as thorough an answer as I wanted to. So I put together a very quick presentation, and I'm going to go through this with you. I'm not an expert on this in the sense that I'm not on any sort of scoring committee. I got to score the essay this summer. That was the basis for the entire test. That was 1 year of experience. I've read a little bit about this, and I have no inside knowledge is what I'm saying. I'm just giving you the information the College Board presents to us civilians. So as I've said before many times, here's the breakdown percentage-wise. Multiple choice, 45% of your total score. You get 45 questions to complete in an hour. 55%, the rest of your score is made up of your 3 essays. You get 2 hours and 15 minutes to complete those. They're scored on a scale from 0 to 6, with 6 being the highest. That changed starting this last year. We're in 2021 now. So starting with the 2020 test is when they started using that new rubric. Okay, so one thing to note is that the College Board does not do a traditional curve. So you might have like teachers who give really tough exams and they curve the grade. They do a bell curve where if you're 2 standard deviations from the mean, you get an A. If you're 1 standard deviation, you get a B. If you're right in the mean, you get a C, so on and so forth. They don't just take the total scores and then throw it into a standard deviation like that. And you'll notice that if you look at the breakdown of the scores from year to year, and you can find these online when you go to the past exams, they provide this info publicly. The number of students who get 5s fluctuates. It's not always a set percentage. They don't always say, all right, well, the top 10%, they get a 5, and 20% below that get a 4, so on and so forth. It changes a lot. And one thing that kind of illustrates that is how high the scores were this past test last May during the pandemic. And a lot of that is probably due to the fact that you'll notice that fewer students were taking it. So a lot of the students who might have diluted the score just chose not to take it. So notice it's about 50,000 fewer students than years prior, 40,000. And it only derived from a single rhetorical analysis essay. So a very small sample on which to base the score. But they determined, all right, what threshold do the students need to meet to earn a 5? And then they give the scores as needed. If you look at the AP Lit scores, those are often significantly lower. Actually, I say that, maybe I'm just thinking Loudoun County and not nationally. But the point is, they have this idea, the people who are the powers that be in AP Lang, at least, in their mind, they're always focused on making sure that, well, I'll let them say it. Here we go. So this is all stuff I've said. The total scores from the free response section and the multiple choice section are combined to form a composite score. These composite scores are then translated into the 5-point scale using statistical processes designed to ensure that, for example, a 3 this year reflects the same level of achievement as a 3 last year. So they're trying to make sure that scores are consistent in the level of skill, that a student who earns a 3 in 2021 would have earned a 3 on the test that was given in 2017. So, but the problem is the test is different. It has different essay prompts. It has different multiple choice questions. So therefore, they have to shift that composite score. So by composite score, what they mean approximately, I think, is, so imagine you got 60% right on multiple choice, and you got 6 out of 6 on all 3 essays. And so they would, let's say they'd give that, I don't know what the composite score itself would look like, but they would say that in 2018 was the threshold to get a 5, getting perfect scores on the essays and as low as a 60% on multiple choice. Whereas perhaps in 2019, they determined that it was a tougher exam overall. So they lowered that threshold for multiple choice. And you still had to get a perfect score to get a 5. But one thing that we can infer as we look at scores and as we look at student performance, because we can receive the free response question from our students. We always get to see the essays they wrote. And so you can then look at the score that the student got, and then you can start to infer some things. So what you can infer is that the better you do on multiple choice, the less of a burden it places on you to get a 5. Really, I don't think you have that great of a chance of getting a 5 unless you're hitting 75% and above, because the odds of getting a perfect score on each essay is very low. Like, you'd have to write 3 6 out of 6 essays in 2 hours and 15 minutes after doing 1 hour of multiple choice. You'd have to be just an exceptionally gifted writer. And so you shouldn't hold yourself to that standard. You should hold yourself to the standard of doing really well on multiple choice in order to give yourself some wiggle room and aim to get 5 out of 6s on all 3, because then that in my mind is kind of the area you should be aiming for. Show perfect competence on those essays as indicated by a 5 out of 6. If you get sophistication, that's great, but don't always bank on getting that. But try to hit for that 75% and above in multiple choice. So hopefully what I'm showing here reflects approximately what that adjustment, that statistical processes that they described might look like. I don't have exactly inside knowledge of that, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's not that we can't tell you exactly what you have to do on each section in order to get a 5. But what I can tell you is that multiple choice is that underrated secret key to getting a 5. Teachers spend a ton of time preparing students for the essays, and we probably should spend twice as much time preparing you for multiple choice than we already do. Like, I just feel like, especially right now and that's the thing. It's going to be, I wish I could be in the room when they're deciding how they're going to, what the secret formula is going to be for getting a 5 on this current exam, what composite score meets that threshold, because they're going to have to take into account the fact that the vast majority of students have been doing this class online with online instruction, or sometimes self-teaching the majority of it. But they will very much place a lot of faith in the multiple choice questions, because those are committee reviewed. Like, every question has been approved by a group of academics as being a good, rigorous question. Whereas the essays are scored by humans, and normally each essay is scored by one person, a different person for each essay still. But so that means you're kind of at the whims of that person who scores it. They have lots of ways of trying to ensure quality, but it's kind of it's something you don't want to bank on as the heart of getting a 5. And that's what kind of all of this, if you're watching this, you're probably hoping to get a 5 on this. And that's kind of what we're aiming for here, and why we're talking about this even. So the takeaway from this is, as good as you do as well as you can on multiple choice, because that raises the floor that you need to hit for the essays, which becomes an issue, especially for students who aren't great at time management. And that's going to be an issue this year, I know, because we don't have these 90-minute blocks of class where we could assign 2 essays at once, or it would just be sadistic to do that in online circumstances, asking students to write 2. So the mental stamina required for that, a lot of students aren't going to be ready for it because they just haven't been prepared for it sufficiently by teachers. That said, maybe they'll do a different exam this year. They'll change it up like they did when the pandemic started. But they haven't indicated that they're going to do that yet. So we will keep preparing as if it'll be a normal exam. But